Hello, everyone, and welcome to our second breakout session, Design Thinking, Putting the Human First. My name's John Monroe, and I'm the Director of Content at GovLoop. And for this session, I'm also your moderator. Thanks so much for joining me. As I said, our topic is design thinking. This topic is critical because when you're creating services or programs or processes, you need to design them with the end user in mind. Otherwise, they're just not going to be able to use them effectively. So that's what we want to talk about today. But before we get to that, I do have a few housekeeping items to cover. And if you've been with us today, these are all going to sound familiar. So first, we do have great resources available for you to download, including the slide deck that you'll be seeing here. And you can find those in the resource tab along the bottom of the screen. In fact, you can find everything along the bottom of the screen. If you'd like to use the closed captioning feature, for example, just look for the show captions icon along the bottom of the screen. And of course, we hope you don't have any technical difficulties. But if you do, just send a message through the Q&A tab, and my colleague Andrew will help you out. And now you can use that same tab to submit questions to our speaker. You can submit those questions, by the way, at any time during the session. Don't wait towards the end. We also have an open chat available. This is where you can actually interact with other attendees. And we do want to hear from you. So please, please, please don't be shy. And now, if you miss anything during the session, if you get called away or anything at all, don't worry. Tomorrow, we're going to email you a link to the entire event so that you can watch this session or any other session on demand. All right, so I'm sure you know, you can earn 1 CPE credit for your participation in today's session. To get that credit, you need to do 3 things. First, stay and participate for the whole session. And you know what? You're going to want to do that anyway, so that one's easy. 2, take all the polls. There will be 3 of them, so go ahead and take those. And if you have any trouble taking the polls, just put a remark in the Q&A tab. And third, fill out the post-event CPE evaluation. Now, you can find the CPE evaluation form in the resource module of this console, or in the main environment, you can go to the Resource Center. And so all CPE certificates will be emailed directly to you once we've clarified that you've confirmed that you've met all the requirements. All right, with all that housekeeping out of the way, let me introduce you to our speaker. Joining us today is TJ Espey. She's a portfolio manager at USDA, and she has lots of insights and experiences to share with you all. She's been on NextGen before. She's a rock star. So without further ado, TJ, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate that. And welcome, everybody. Let's definitely have fun this session. So I'm currently with USDA, but I am a short timer. I just hit 30 years of service, so I will be exiting the federal government soon. So
Congratulations.
thank you. But before I get started, I just wanted to send a special recognition and a shout out to all of the federal government innovation hubs that, basically raised me in design. I'm talking about the Innovation Lab at OPM, 18F, with reorganization of the federal governments, a lot of these programs no longer exist. I'm hopeful once all the dust settled that they can, get re-energized and reinstated again. But, just recognizing, leaders in innovation like Ariane Miller and Stephanie Wade and, so many others, Abby Wilson, Rebecca Piazza. This is so many people within 18F and the Innovation Lab at OPM that a lot of us in human-centered design couldn't be where we are without them. So I just want to thank them for their dedication to the federal government. And at the state and local levels, I would hope that you understand if you're in a leadership role or you aspire to be there, don't ever get rid of your innovation hubs because in the long run, you will save. So I'm going to go ahead and get started with the presentation. So here's what we have. Putting the human first in human-centered design. And if you're not familiar with design, you're going to learn a little bit about it. I'm not going to go too in depth because there's a lot of design schools out there and universities. You got Stanford D School, Carnegie Mellon, and even at a lot of other universities are offering design right now because they know that it pays off and the returns are just awesome. So here's our agenda for today's session. Why human-centered design in government? You figure like, okay, we set the pace, we set everything. So why are we even thinking about human-centered design in government? Key elements in human-centered design and how to apply it to your agency, overcoming barriers, calling to action, and going to share a few success stories. And then finally, I'm going to share a page of some resources and references. So designing with the human in mind, with the people. So I know we are definitely, like I've probably mentioned at another session here with GovLoop, it's all about self-love and boundaries, and everybody is on that bandwagon right about now. But when you are designing services for the government, we truly got to think about the citizens that we support in this country. We truly, truly care and we want things to be seamless and reduce burden and not stack up our call centers with a gazillion calls. It's so important that we get it right the first time and not just thinking about ourselves, because it's a lot of technology out there these days, and as government, do we want to be the ones that are 15, 20 years behind private sector or corporate? We don't want to be those types, so we need things and solutions that are intuitive, responsive, equitable. And keep in mind, it applies to everything. And I'm going to go a little further in detail when we hit slide 3. It's going to reduce waste because you're cutting out, you're improving a process or a product, and you're going to end up saving your agency or your program organization a lot of money. And there's been measurable results to show the level of efficacy with human-centered design. So don't think that it's something that those are just buzzwords, it don't really work. It's not true. We have a lot of research to prove otherwise. Go ahead and advance here. Okay. Ooh, we're going too far. All right. So let me
did
make
you
sure.
want to do a did you want to do a poll?
Yeah, I think we missed the poll. Did it go? Did it go?
Yeah, here we can do that now.
Okay.
So
All right. So we're gonna stop for a quick poll, and it's: have you or your agency ever used human-centered design principles in a project? So yes, no, or not sure. So this is kind of gauging our level of expertise in HCD right now. And if I know a significant number of us are very familiar, then I know how far in depth to go as well. So let's see what you're saying.
what's your sense of, it seems like human-centered design has kind of become much more kind of visible in the last couple of years. Is that your impression?
I'll say I got started in about 2014 is when I took my presidential management fellowship rotation at the lab at OPM. So it's been a long time for me, but as far as being familiar with everybody else, it's been taking a while. Okay. Oh, okay, good. So 50% not sure. We have some hard no's at 24%, and then we have 26% yes. So good. Kudos to the yes. But the no and not sure, that's what I'm here for. And I'm going to challenge you to continue to do your research even after this session. I hope to spark something in you to make you want to do a little bit more digging and a little bit more research. So yay, thank you for taking that first poll. So we're going to move on now to the next slide. Okay, so key elements, okay? First off, understanding and empathizing with what population that you're supporting, no matter what you're doing. And I mean, it's broad, so understanding, so you got to know who your stakeholders are, who you're targeting, and, actually conduct those interviews. We call that ethnographic research, getting out there, talking to folks, observing. And that first part is so key and critical, is just knowing your stakeholders. Now, as consumers, we're always studied. right? You can't even talk loud in your phone because after that, they're listening to everything you're saying. Ads are going to start coming to your email. And then sometimes you'll walk in the doctor's office and they'll bring up something that's going on in your life. And you're looking like, are you freaking kidding me? I mean, we have ears everywhere. So corporate America studies us. They know us. They empathize with us because they want that money in our pockets. Let's face it. So HCD is very common in the private sector because they need to know what stakeholder and the target audience that they're serving. However, on the government side, we don't always take that time. We're not listening to people as much as corporate in our phones, and everything else is targeting us to kind of shake those pockets out a little bit. So when you're thinking about whatever you're working on, be it could be a policy, it could be a product, whatever it is, you have to think about who's my stakeholder. So we have the leaders of this organization, what citizens, what population you're serving. Don't forget about the auditors who's going to inspect you one day on what you're doing. So it's a list of people that you have to consider before you get to that target population, and, those audits, those desk side interviews to even see like, okay, what do I need to design for? So I'm going to go way back in my career because I have a lot of past lives. So way back in the day, when I was a blue collar government federal worker, we call that the wage grade system. I was an electronic mechanic and technician, right? So part of my portfolio was serving Department of Emergency Services. So this is the firemen, the policemen, and all of those folks. And got a call, me and my partner, we got a call, and the fire chief, in the middle of a crisis, he couldn't communicate. His power went dead, and he had his truck to where he set up like an operational command out of, and no power. So we rush out there. It's raining, of course. It's not like I'm telling that horrible story, but it is raining, and I've got these Carhartt steel toe boots. I'm ready to take on the world. And I get there, fire chief greets me. I'm looking around, and here goes my partner. He starts ripping out. I'm like, hey, buddy, hold on. Don't start ripping out all that linguini just yet. We don't know where it's going to have to go back to. Just stop it. Let's do some basic troubleshooting here, because a lot of times it's something simple. So I'm looking, I'm observing. And then I noticed that the installers or the engineers who put the plans together, they put the connector where the fire chief throws all of his gear, right? So when he would throw his gear in the vehicle, it would pop off the power connector, and all of this whole fleet was like that. So as you can see, we had a lot of repairs to make. So it was a simple fix at the moment, but we had to completely go back and redo all of the fleet, right, for our firemen and DES. And not only that, the frequencies, the radio frequencies, because I did it all, right? So when we have an emergency, all of how the DES, they communicate, emergency services communicate, is on a bandwidth, it's on a frequency link, right, level. They were all compressed. They were all too close, so that when you all try to communicate due to a national disaster, it all jams, okay? So had to reprogram because, it's that little extra step in design that people don't do or don't think about when they're thinking about what if all hell breaks loose, excuse my French, and everybody's communicating at the same time and you didn't do, why is it plugged in and turned on the first question, right? I get it. So it's things like that you have to go back. So now how much you think it costs now? Government has to go behind a contractor and completely redo things. It's a lot of money, and you don't end up saving. So if you actually go through and you're that engineer, you're that technician, you kind of look and see how your customer operates as you're designing before you put it all together to prevent those type of things, and that rework, which now ching, 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 is starting to cost the taxpayer a lot more money. Secondly, defining the problem, right? What are we actually solving here? So framing the problem is the biggest thing. Oftentimes we solve for the wrong problem because we don't take the time to get all the stakeholders at the table and really analyze what the true problem is. And if we go and chat right now, I guarantee you that I can mention one thing and you would all solve it differently. And if we have more time, we would have fun with exercises like that. But you get the gist of what I'm saying here. So you have to do framework to solve the problems, identify and you're solving the correct problem. And you do this by creating personas. And we're going to show an example of a persona of that citizen or that person or that employee or that colleague that you're actually designing that policy or that product for. You create a persona, who they are, what issues they have, you map out the process. When we go into that McDonald's and we want them to go to the electronic kiosk as opposed to walking up, well, how do we bring them into the restaurant? How do we make sure that they're not bumping into the other folks in line? How do we make sure that it's not taking up so much space that it's going to obstruct the operation and flow of everything else? So it's a lot of mindful things that you may have to map out. That's what a journey map is. Or what if you work at a hospital and you have to onboard, new employees, or you have a process of onboarding, but you've never actually walked it out? So I can recall overseeing operations, working with wounded service members. Initially, the way I had the onboarding process set up, it was convoluted. I had people going here and there and here and there. Now imagine if these folks have a disability and they're having to go from this building to that building. I'm in a very hot state that's very humid at the time. So, by the time they get done with their onboard and offboard, they're exhausted and they dang near have a whole new disability. So you have to think about things like that. What process are you sending people through? How can we streamline it? How can we simplify it? And that can be done through journey mapping, where you're actually writing out, or you walk through the process initially, both, and you think about the constraints that that person may have with disabilities, be it crutches or a wheelchair or limited mobility and different types of disabilities and things of that nature. And it doesn't even have to be that, but in anything we do, you have to write it out, through journey maps so that you can understand how that flow is working. And then you have problem statements. So we often refer to problem statements as how might we statements. So a good problem statement could be, how might we make our services better? And you have a team of folks on your design team, your project team, and you brainstorm on that problem, and you get a lot of data points at that point. So that's what they mean by those problem statements. And as we go on, you'll see how you can have a big problem, and then you're going to narrow down to get into the meat of what you're actually solving for. So I'm going to take a quick pause right there before we go on, see if we have any questions pop up. Hopefully it's all making sense. It's common things, but you don't necessarily always have the terminology to it. It's things that a lot of you are doing, and you may naturally be that person who like to problem solve or who like to improve processes, right? Okay.
Yeah,
the
so
ideation.
we got
Go
one
ahead.
question here, and that is how is this different from or related to continuous improvement methodology, such as lean or what have you?
It's very close with Lean Six Sigma, but it's different. Lean is you're following a specific problem to identify, where there's lag, and you have different steps that you take to reduce that lag to improvement. With human-centered design, and I'm gonna say this right now, there's a lot of different methodologies like it is with Agile and everything else, but you're still a project manager. You're still, executing a project. But the difference in design is you're taking that time to do a little bit more research than Lean Six. You're bringing in more stakeholders. You're doing more audits, and you're sitting with people and you're interviewing more. So it can take a little bit. It's taken you out. I've executed Lean Six projects before, and I didn't work with everybody like I do with design projects. It's different there. So you're going to take a deeper delve than Lean Six, to mathematically make that process run a little bit smoother. But great question, and I can take a deeper delve if you need me to. But yeah, it is different though. But I incorporate all when I manage projects as a longtime project manager in the government. So, like I said, with the ideation portion, that's going to be, you want to spend a good amount of time with those problem statements that how might we, and make sure that you get enough data points and you've conducted enough interviews and research to get all of those data points. And we'll talk about that in a little bit. Now, testing with users and usability tests. So I worked with NIT for a good portion of my career, and usability tests is very, very important. Now, this is not UAT. It's a difference between UAT, user acceptance testing, and usability testing. User acceptance testing is more with the developers and the customer. This is what you wanted. It's doing this. Yep, we check it, we go on. Usability testing, you're actually conducting the usability testing with the users in mind that you're going to do the work with. So for instance, food nutrition service. Now say I'm coming out with a new application to apply for WIC's benefits, and I have an electronic kiosk. I would actually have one of the participants who volunteers to actually go through the steps to see where we can identify problems and then actually solve one of the problems to make it better. So with usability testing, you're actually working with the person or the customer that you have in mind, or somebody who wouldn't have a bias or have an understanding of it to where they can go through. So what I'll pause and say with that is, we don't realize it in government, but we use a lot of jargon. We use a lot of jargon. We use big technical terms and $5 and $10 words, and it all makes sense to us. But then when we pass it along to the public, we're like, what are they saying? Why does it sound litigious? I love my attorneys and lawyers, but sometimes, we got to think about when we're designing things, what grade level are we designing to? Is the average person going to understand it? Or who, are we just trying to sound smart? So we got to be careful not to just try to sound smart and understand that some people can read a sentence 15 times in a policy that you're trying to put out or a ruling, and they can't get it. And the people could be people in the states or people at the county or even other layers of government. We've had a lot of design teams work with folks at state that get something from the federal government and they don't understand. Like, what are they saying? So then they're calling and they're putting in inquiries. I just don't understand. Then you come up to us at the federal level. What makes sense to me? What are you talking about? You don't necessarily want that. So you have to conduct those usability tests. And, there's a lot of different ways that you can conduct that usability testing. And they even have listservs. And the good thing with usability testing now, the Office of Management and Budget actually put out a memo saying that you don't have to get approval from them through the Paperwork Reduction Act in order to conduct usability testing. So before, you'd have to get permission to even, ping the government, citizens. I guess apparently in the past, many, many moons ago, the government were always, post the public for so much that they had to put a whole act in place to say, you have to stop bothering people. and if you want to keep bothering people, you have to come to us to get approval. So with usability testing, you don't have to necessarily go up to get that approval within reason. There's a few, constraints or rules and restrictions here and there. But for the most part, they want to volunteer to take that test, they can. So, you conduct your usability tests, you gather all of your feedback, you create these little prototypes. Back when I used to design like website formats, you try it out on folks. Hey, go to this site. What do you think? Where's the pain points? What didn't make sense? Put in the comments if you've ever, and I know we have, you go to any website and it's so much information on that screen. You're looking around and you're like, oh my goodness, I can't even, so imagine I can recall many, many moons ago, working on a project to refine the retirement services online because, think about people as they age, people that are retired now, typically the first thing we want to do, we want to call somebody all the time, but we're trying to direct folks to actually, go to the website. There's a lot of things they can solve for there. But if you get to that website and everything's too small and, when the eyes age, you can't see as well and it's all over the place, it doesn't make sense, then guess what? you're going to defeat the purpose, right? Somebody's going to get on the phone and call somebody. So, just making sure that, you create those prototypes, have people push and fill. And what do you think? You have your production area, your playground, so to speak, of where people can test it before you actually go live. And then guess what? In today's time, nothing can be locked in stone. Years past when something is created, that's just how it is. And it's going to take about 5 or 6 years before you can change it. No, we have to iterate, meaning that we're constantly refining and making updates to simplify things. So I'm going to stop right there for a second. And then, of course, you have implementation. It's when you actually put it out into production. Now, when you go full scale implementation and you're constantly monitoring performance through data that you're pulling, through analytics that you're pulling, and dashboards, seeing how many people are actually, if it's the case of a website, how many people are visiting the sites? What happened when they click on this link? How many folks are actually going in to contact support because they can't figure out something. There's a lot of data points that you can pull from those analytics that's going to tell you that, hey, something's not right. Every time they click on this link, bam, help. Something's just not jiving, so it's because that application is flawed. People are not understanding. It made sense to you, but it's not making sense to other people. So those are things we have to be mindful of. So we're going to go into some examples soon and dig a little bit deeper into some of these ideas. I can't teach a whole design course in the amount of time that we have, but I just want you all to get a good understanding of exactly what design is.
Hey, got a question for you. I think might be worth answering.
Okay.
And I got a feeling this is a question that a lot of people could have asked. How do you execute a new design, process, pathway, etc., using human capital only with little or no budget? But the
Ooh,
need is great. So what do you do when you just don't got those resources?
good question. Good question. And my answer is this, because you're not always going to have the money to do this type of research. So sometimes we have to leverage other departments and other agencies within like listserv. Like I'm on the usability listserv for the federal government, right? So people will put in there, hey folks, I'm trying to test this out. Please look at it and give me feedback, or I'm stuck right here. And they'll get in and they'll say, hey, I had that problem too, blah, 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 blah. So if you do a little digging, most of the time at every level of government, there's like groups and listservs that you can post. A lot of smart and brilliant people out there that can get you the information. Secondly, outside of that, we also have a lot of nonprofits that are conducting a lot of similar work that you can reach out to if you do a little digging, and they're happy to help you and share resources. And they have a little bit more leverage because they don't have all of the, let's be let's be frank here. They don't have to matriculate all of the bureaucracy that we do in any level of government, so they can more freely assist you that way. Finally, the last point I'm going to make to that is you have conferences from time to time where you're actually out engaging with the public. You have your little station up, and people are walking by and you're kind of bored and fidgety, and somebody walks by. That's what I used to do. Like when I was with the Navy, we were testing out apps and widgets. We'd actually have our little iPad up and we see a sailor walk by. Hey, would you mind testing out this new app that we have? And they're like, sure, I would love to. And they give you your feedback and we record that feedback. So that's 3 ways right there that's relatively inexpensive. You're just capitalizing on a conference that you're already having. Maybe you weren't invited to that conference, but you have something that you want to test or want somebody to read something, and you ask your supervisor, well, can I go? Because I have something I can really benefit from. So that's just 3 ways. If anybody else have any other ideas in the chat, this is a time for us to share. I'm not the know-all, be-all, I'm just me, and I have my expertise, but there's a lot of other smart folks on the line right now. So drop it in chat if there's other ways that you save money with design, but those are relatively simple. All right, so next we're going to talk about stakeholder analysis. We're going to go a little bit more deep on that, and persona. So In this case, in regards to, yes, we're moving along and cruising. In regards to stakeholder analysis, like say WIC benefits, I'm at Food Nutrition Service, so we work with the food nutrition program. So, if we're designing a product for WIC, at first we have to have an idea of, who we're targeting, who's going to apply for these benefits. So it takes a little deep dive into, what's the typical situation in this. And we actually create personas in design. Okay. So this is, for instance, a Sophia, she may be a potential applicant, average age, kid age, what's some things going on with Sophia. She want to make sure she has the access, but she may not have a lot of support. She can't afford food because inflation is kind of hard and high right now. And but she want her baby to be healthy, but she needs assistance. She feels like she's going online and she's chasing her tail and she can't figure out how to get to the benefits. So that's an example of a persona. And you can apply that to the Forest Service or wherever you're working, or, within state, unemployment benefits, who the average person is going to come for your benefits, some of the problems, constraints, knowing a little bit more about them. Because I tell you, we're stepping outside of ourselves. Design is a mindful practice. So you're being mindful of what somebody else may go through, not what you go through. So it takes a little time. So that's why it's important to build out at least a few personas to understand who you're targeting when you're trying to improve this service. So then you have stakeholder maps, so different types of stakeholder maps, you have, committees and customers, employees and partners. Some of you, all of your work is internal to where you're working at. You may not work with the public, but it's okay. That's your customer, and you still have to design for that customer and make sure that even within government that our own internal processes are simplified so that, we don't have a bunch of angry people. I've used some very non-intuitive systems within government. It's like you have this big project going on, but you have to stop and do this. And then you get into that system and your head almost explodes. You're like, I don't have time for this. Why do I have to do it? And you're frustrated. I remember when I was overseeing operations at IT, I had, a non-person. He comes to me, he was like, oh, you work there, you're over. Can you please do something about this system? It's the worst system. Can you please, and everybody will start telling you things. And then you're like, is it that bad? Because I don't have to use it now. And you go look at it, you're like, oh my gosh, yes, my head exploded. So let's just make sure that, within a stakeholder, your colleagues are your stakeholders too. So if you're that person in HR and IT or whatever you're doing, and you are delivering things to your fellow colleagues, think about what your colleagues are going to, or what they're not going to be able to do because something that you designed is not intuitive rather. And you could say, well, we didn't have no money for anything else, but you can set up some time with some other colleagues, do some brainstorming and figure out how to make something better. I'm going to move on. Got a comment here that says, yesterday I was reading how one state used its own Department of Administration staff to try out a new AI app. That's what I'm talking. Try it out. You use one another, right? And you're like, okay, how can you use your own staff? Okay, how about you use staff from another department that don't work within your department? Now, they're not biased. They're completely unbiased, and they can give you some feedback and say, hey, this worked, we kept it within the scope. We put our information from here. This is how the data was aggregated and it's spit out like this, or whatever it was. Use folks from outside of that immediate department and they can help you as well. So we're going to talk about problems. Boy, we all have problems, right? It's always something. So we want to make sure we're framing the right problem. Because like I said, right now, if I went to everybody and said, okay, that would be a big can of worms. What's the problem with our current state, right now? Everybody's going to say, oh, it's this, it's that. We'll get all political, we'll get religious, everything will go into there. And the problems are so great. It's like anything else, right? You never can solve it because everybody is trying to solve for something else and everybody is blaming everybody else. So it's so nebulous and out of control. So when you're faced with a problem, you have to make sure you're framing and solving the right problem. So what are the users really trying to accomplish? What is it? So in a case of an application that somebody's filling out and they're navigating it, even something simple like a PDF form that you require the public or somebody in the public to fill out. And on the form, you know, you wonder why people aren't completing all of the fields and you can't process the application, but the font is -60. They can't read the application. It's simple things. So you think the problem is, everybody's in a hurry and, they can't read, something's wrong with them, but really the problem is the service that we actually deliver to them, and we're getting mad at them. And they're like, you can't get mad. So what are we really solving for? So through those brainstorming sessions, and think about it, right? What if you set up just a little time on your calendar? You think about a problem or a project that you're working on right now. You get some colleagues together and you say, okay, the last 30 minutes of the day before I completely burn out, I'm going to get with this person or that person, or maybe the first 30 minutes or over your lunch period. Can you guys brainstorm with me? Because I'm stuck right here. This keeps happening. It's taken a lot of my time, and I know there's a better way I can do this. Let's simplify it. Not even on some big, broad scale, I saved the whole world type of project. Something very simple. And you get folks with you and you put out that problem statement. Now, how might we get patients to fill out this paperwork correctly the first time? Well, and then people are going to start, spitting out all of those answers. So, once you start seeing these themes, communications, access, lack of access, these things will start popping up and you'll start clustering these themes together and then you know how to solve. So you're going to dig into the context and the consequences of the issue. Well, what's the consequence? Okay, the consequence is this person can't get the health care that they deserve, or this person can't, finish their application to get food benefits, or, I'm trying to retire in the system that I'm trying to put my paperwork in. I can't because I get I keep getting this code that it won't accept this document format, or it only takes this level or this size, so it's a million different things we can solve for. How about we start small? So who is experiencing this problem and what are the conditions? You're going to focus on the scope, identifying those target users, the environments, use cases, and this is going to be the key to avoiding these generalized and misdirected solutions. So in the case of, going back to WIC is always a good example, so right now, at Food Nutrition Service, we are piloting and implementing WIC online shopping service, so why is it important to be able to shop online with WIC benefits? Well, it's not across all the states. It's all the states that are participating. Well, it's important because some people live in very, very rural environments or somewhere where they have limited access, and to have the ability to order it or maybe pick it up or maybe have it delivered is going to help people with transportation issues, limited mobility, or maybe you don't have the time to drag your kid through the grocery store because you have 3 other ones. And while you're trying to appease the baby, the youngest child, the other 3 are pulling things off the shelves, and you about lost your hair in one visit to the grocery store. So it's a lot of reasons why it's going to help out people who may have those issues, to where we need to develop and design something that can help them. All right, we're going to move on. Looking at time here, we want to make sure we get through everything. Data synthesis and theming. This is okay. We have our problem now. Now those themes that we were talking about, we're going to group those themes: communication, lack of resources. That's always big, right? Like somebody mentioned, I don't have the money for that. That, so you have the resources, typically the comms, you have what's another, it's a lot of things, but you're theming the potential problems: lack of access or whatever, no transportation to do this. So you theme it all, and you're going to aggregate this data and you're going to group it into themes. And then once you get all of that data and you get a picture of, it really is communications. We want our citizen, our customer to do this, but we only gave them that, but we're trying to get them here. And now, because we synthesize that data just right, we can actually see it. We're like, oh, wow, that's a huge problem. That's a huge pattern. If we adjust this and or do that, hey, we can solve for this. And then guess what? We're not going to be stuck on that. We're going to keep going through doing multiple iterations and updates to make sure we get our customer where they need to be. And which in turn will save us because it's going to mitigate and cut down the number of calls to the call center or the number of emails that have to go out and so forth and so on. Journey mapping. So journey mapping, and this is actually a journey map for one of my old colleagues at OPM. You're writing out a process. You can, and it doesn't have to be all fancy. Whenever you're designing something, you working within your teams, you can actually a process or a product or whatever it is, you can actually handwrite it out until you get it. You can use different apps, for process maps. But if you don't have that technology or you got to wait, 5 years before you get it approved, just draw it out initially. Or you can just do it electronically. This is a journey map of an applicant navigating a passport application. So, and this is probably not how they do it now. I'm sure I have some state folks online like, I think not. This is just an example. I know state, you guys are backed up right now. So sending hugs and kisses to you because I'm sure everybody's trying to get a passport. So yeah, that's just, you can also do it digitally, electronically, when you're just mapping out what you're trying to solve for or what the journey of that customer is. And that customer, like I said before, can even be a colleague. Prototyping. So, in this case, you're looking at, okay, somebody built a little paper house. Maybe this is an architect. This is a design. This is going to be cut and set up on a hill. And yes, this is how it's going to be, But, okay, even if you're not an architect or, some high-speed designer like that, you could be, working anywhere at any level, and you can prototype on paper first, the process, or the buttons that you want somebody to push on that app that you're creating or that computer screen, and have people go through little fake wireframes that they're just pushing things that don't necessarily exist because it's still going to trigger some pain points that you can address later. And I want to save some time for the end, so I don't want to rush us. I think we have another question I'd like to post folks with. John. There we go.
Sorry about that.
No worries. We'll just get a poll up here, get a little engagement in here. So just thinking about your organizations, looking at your organization, have you used these activities in human-centered design frequently? Or which ones have you used the most? It may just be analysis. You may just sat around with colleagues and talked about who the folks you need to work with. Have you actually journey mapped or prototyped or usability testing, or you haven't done it yet? And usability testing, it doesn't have to be formal. It can be something that's very, very simple, like asking somebody else outside of your immediate department to test something out before you put it out to the masses.
Okay, looks like anyone else want to enter their answer before I close the poll? Yep, just a few more coming in. I will tell you, sneak preview, prototyping ain't getting any love, which is interesting.
Yeah.
So, all right, let me share the results. There you go.
Okay, so like I figured, a lot of folks are conducting that stakeholder analysis. It's great. 38% journey mapping, that's good. 18% prototyping, no love. Usability testing, okay, 15%. And 29% said none yet. That's okay, Govies, because you're going to get there. You're definitely going to get there. So that speaks volume. So you're doing some of it, but you're not doing all of it. And that's the beauty of design, is this. You don't have to do all of it. You don't have to. But take a part of it to think about whatever you do in your world. And we do so many different things across your careers. You're doing so many different things. So if you can work within your teams or even within your portfolio to think about what part of design that you can apply that's going to help somebody else out in the long run. And it's like I said, I mentioned some ways you can do it when you're on a tight budget, but there's also ways that, we can reflect and get a lot of the usability testing done too. But prototyping, I get it. It's like, okay, who has time to prototype? Well, I know if we have some IT folks on, you have testers who are, testing environments. That's somewhat of a prototype, but you don't think big. When we think prototypes, a lot of us are thinking a spaceship. This is the little model, is going to do all of it, doesn't have to be fancy like that. A prototype can literally be a piece of paper that, you build, or that frame of what you want that website to look like. This is how I want this web page to look like. This is the icons that I want. This is the drop down menu, the hamburger stack, whatever it is, that can be a prototype. So don't let the word, make you intimidate you to think that you have to do so much just to prototype something, because you don't. It's just a mock of what you want to do. So usability testing, again, I definitely wanted to pause here and focus a little bit on usability testing, because it's so important to have somebody out there to test out what you're trying to get out. And it could be broad. And when we have a little bit of time to chat here toward the end, I want you, let's brainstorm together and type things in a chat. You can say, hey, this is my problem. How can I get the public or my customer to test this out? And we can we have a little bit of time to have a little fun at the end. But like I say, I have a link to the OMB guidance on the federal side, and everything rolls down. So just saying that, hey, you can do this without getting approval in regards to the Paperwork Reduction Act, in order to get folks to actually test this out before you put it in production. Okay, so how are you going to do this where you're at? This is your agency. You can replace agency with organization, office, whatever you want to apply this to. It can be a volunteer activity that you're doing. So, you're going to start with people and you're going to end with impact, because in the end, if you focus and you're mindful of who you are trying to cater and design for, you're going to get a big return on your investment. Now, initially, it doesn't seem that way because you took a few extra minutes to talk to people before you created something. But it's kind of like that trust fund that grandma and grandpa set up for you years ago, and people told them, why are you putting this money aside for that? That's stupid. Just get your whole check in. And now you're sitting up pretty fat with a trust because somebody did something that they didn't necessarily have to do, but it yielded big returns. So that's how design is. Sometimes, yes, you can look at it like, I don't have time to do that research. I don't have time to talk to people. My supervisor wants this done yesterday, but you can frame it, and that managing up with your supervisor to say, hey, before I create this policy or we put this ruling out, I would like to have a few folks read it. It's going to take us maybe an extra week or two, but it's going to save us some time with all of the edits and chops. So do you mind if I take that extra time just to get a few folks to play with it or visit it or use it or whatever it is, whatever that product is. So conducting those interviews and then map out their experience and map their influence, where it's touching those people in the process, from the higher level folks that may inspect you or may regulate you to the lower level folks. There's a lot of folks that you need to consider when you're building or doing what you're doing, because it's going to have implications all the way around. Using empathy maps and persona to understand the needs, and that can be just drawing a little stick figure. This is John, this is Jane, this is the process that they go through to do X, Y, Z. And then when as you get into the moment, it gets really interesting where you're actually stepping outside of your own mind to kind of consider, okay, what's something this person may go through based on what I've been doing before. Oh, I dealt with people who, may have this going on and that going on and so forth and so on. And then when you really consider all of those things, you'll get those aha moments and that light bulb will go off and you'll think, this is something I maybe need to consider. With the USDA, I work customer experience. Customer experience is all about empathy and looking out for other folks. So in that, I read the data points on what people say, and what they say is not always pleasant. So how might we questions run design sprints and proto tests and test real users, even if it's just 5%, or 5 participants, they can tell you a lot of feedback. And then you use that little map that you can write out to visualize the pain points and opportunities. Okay, so before we go to the call to action, we're going to pull up the last poll question because I want to save at least 10 minutes for us to talk and have these conversations with one another. So what is your biggest challenge using human-centered design in your agency?
While we're waiting people to put in their final answers, the question I have for you is, what's your sense of acceptance of human, design thinking at executive levels? Is this something that kind of the higher ups get? Understand why it's worth it?
Most of them, like I can speak on behalf of the agencies that I've supported, are definitely supporters of design, so long as you can build a solid justification. So as long as you explain, what's the return on investment, the why, and if you can explain yourself just in simple terms, because we keep getting complaints, because we don't have the staff to keep answering these questions, because the call center is frustrated with our office because we get the most questions to the call center. So yes, most executives are very supportive, but keep in mind, you do have to frame the why. So it looks like lack of time is 25%, lack of training is 39%. Yes, I understand. Unsure how to start, that's 24, and no executive support is 13. So thank you. And lack of training. So I will say there's a lot of free resources for design training out there, like big innovation companies like IDEO. There's a lot of books you can get on Amazon. For the folks who are fortunate that can afford design school, there's a lot of universities. You can major in design these days. A digital twin format and a persona would be an interesting approach. Yes, Kimberly. Okay, I'm loving some Kimberly. I like Risa's comment here, but I'm going to keep going. So call to action. This is what I'm asking you guys to do. Small steps, small, big impact, okay? Add a user interview to your next project. Just one if you have to, just one. Just start small. Use a journey map in your next program review. Just map out whatever you're doing, even if you're an analyst, a process person. Partner with your agency's customer experience or user experience or innovation team. If they're out there, just partner with them. And like I said, don't forget about private sector. Consider using the Paperwork Reduction Act, that PRA exemptions for using usability testing. And I linked the link in the previous slide. So this is a nice quote from our U.S. Digital Service. Government should work for the people, and that starts with understanding people. Okay, so success stories, I'm going to let you read them because I really want to leave some time for us at the end. So U.S. Digital Service and Veterans Affairs, streamlining the claim forms, reduce the abandonment rates by over 50%. The school lunch program, I was a part of that team. We did win the Design Management Institute Award. That's one of the highest awards you can get in design. 18F and GSC login.gov is basically that one-stop shop for all of the federal government. Excellent project, excellent work by our government designers out there, prototyping and data synthesis to create a secure, user-friendly authentication platform used by millions, including me and a lot of you out there, especially if you need to look at your Social Security benefit statements, right? Okay, so I left some resources here. 18F is still, they have a wonderful nonprofit site up now. They said we're not done yet, so you can still reach out to them. Ariane Miller, she provided a lot of designer Slack communities. There's a lot of communities here you can click on and just start researching. Creativebureaucracy.org, I love it. I left some recommended readings. I listed out IDEO, couple of other books you can get. And then I wanted to send a special shout out for Brittany Chang. Don't forget The Human. These are a few LinkedIn articles you can read. And if you've written articles or you know of others that you want to share or reference, just let me know. I'll be happy to post them on my LinkedIn page as well. So with that being said, I know we're down to only 5 minutes. I'm so sorry, but it's such a broad concept. It's hard really to cram in really fast to give everybody the gist of what it means. But I want to open it up right now for questions. So.
All right, well, we got one question here in the chat. When did the PRA exemption for usability testing come out? Recently?
That was the end of 2024. So yes,
Okay.
at the beginning of the year. It basically was released like December 2024. So it is more recent.
I got a question for you. You mentioned, the user interviews. What makes a good user interview?
And in terms of
kind of what do you really want to get out of a user interview?
So you basically want them to identify all of their pain points. You have to narrow down specifically what you're asking them, because otherwise people can give you a mouthful. So you come in with, this is what I need your feedback on, and you just ask them questions based on that particular application or that particular process. And then you just start, taking your notes and collecting those data points.
Excellent. All right. Well, unfortunately, we are out of time. TJ, this has been marvelous. So much information. I thought I understood this topic. I learned a lot today. So thank you so much for
I hope
this.
you guys had a good time, and you can always reach out to me on LinkedIn. I'm sorry I had to rush it, but it's just so many awesome designers out there across the government, all levels. Please, if I just ask all of you to just apply it in a small way to take care of this great country that we live in and really, really make it better. So it's the least that we can do, because you have a unique opportunity to do so. So I really appreciate your time and your attention.
Excellent, excellent. And while I'm saying thanks, I also want to thank all our wonderful sponsors that are part of our NextGen Partner Alliance for, they've been absolutely critical in helping us put on the NextGen Summit. And just a couple reminders. Please don't forget to fill out your CP evaluation form so that you can get your credit. And if you haven't already, do stop, go over to the exhibit hall before the next keynotes. Check out some of the amazing booths. There's lots of good information there. And so speaking of the next session, our closing keynotes will begin at 3 p.m. Eastern. You can access those sessions in the session tab of the main environment. Again, thank you all so much for joining us, and we'll see you in the next session.
And thank you for congratulating me on my retirement. I appreciate it. Hopefully I can still support the public at a certain capacity. So can't get rid of me just yet, but I really appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you all.